welcome to today's video. If you guys watch my channel often, you may have noticed recently that I have not been posting every single Monday. For the last, I think I've been doing this for 6 years now. I was doing 2 videos per week, then I went to 1 video per week, and I was posting every single Monday. But I am just a little tired and I feel like sometimes I need a break. So I may not be doing every single Monday going forward. Maybe every other Monday, every couple weeks. I don't know. It really is going to depend on how I'm feeling and my state, because I am dealing with a disease that makes me very tired and my energy is just very low. So I may be doing a little bit less videos going forward. I apologize because I know a lot of you guys want more videos, which there will be more coming. Good things will happen, but the frequency is probably going to be a little bit less because I just need a little bit of a break. But I'm happy I'm here today, and today we are going to be talking about everything you need to know about reptile diets. And I really hope that this will be helpful. I have some awesome things that I want to recommend in this video as well, so let's just jump right into it. So the first thing that we're going to be talking about when it comes to feeding any type of reptile that is so important is variety. So this is something that can get skipped oftentimes because some people get fixated on feeding the same exact food for their reptile. And sometimes the reptile just prefers a certain type of food and they're picky and they don't want to eat other things. So it makes keepers stick to that one thing that they do like. And this can be problematic if that one thing they like just doesn't have a lot of nutrients to it. And the best thing to do when feeding any reptile is to offer as much variety as you possibly can. It's like a human being. You don't want to just eat one thing for the rest of your life. That's not healthy for you. So all things are good in moderation, and you want to be accumulating a lot of different things within your own diet, and that's how it should be for your reptile as well. So the first thing that I want to talk about when it comes to variety is insects. So some of the staple insects that are good to feed all the time, very frequently to reptiles, are dubia roaches, black soldier fly larvae, and crickets are okay. Some of the foods that are more of a treat and can be high in fat and are not good to feed as a staple are superworms, waxworms, butterworms. All of those types of worms are not the best. I have heard that silkworms are another good staple. You would think that that would be one of the worms that are going to be more of a snack, like hornworms. But silkworms are actually very high in nutrients and low in fat, so that would be another good one to offer as a staple to your reptile if you can. They can be kind of hard to come by, so I actually recommend getting silkworms from Fram's Cam's Chameleons. They sell so many of them. They are like the best place to go to for silkworms, so highly recommend checking them out. But yeah, it's important to just offer as much variety in the insects as you possibly can. And another key important thing to feeding insects and variety is to also make sure that you are gut loading your insects. So the best thing that I recommend for gut loading would be fresh fruits and vegetables and dark leafy greens. Of course, you want to make sure that whatever you're feeding your bugs is safe for your reptile as well, because as the bug is eating that food, it's ingesting it, and then your reptile will then ingest that bug, which has all of that good nutrients inside. So you want to make sure that it's good nutrients for your reptile that they're getting in their system as well. There are things on the market that you can try for gut loading your reptiles as well. There's like different powders and things that you can try. Those are okay, you can do that, but I would still recommend offering those dark leafy greens and fresh fruits and vegetables as well, because that's going to offer the most nutrients. Next up is talking about the fruits and vegetables. So it's pretty much the same thing. Some of the great staples that you like to see in your reptile's diet, especially if they do eat greens, are the dark leafy greens like collard greens, dandelion greens, turnip greens. Those are all fantastic. Spinach is something that is okay every now and then. It can be pretty unhealthy and dangerous if you feed it too frequently. So spinach is something that you kind of want to avoid. Things like romaine lettuce and iceberg lettuce are okay. They're mainly going to be offering hydration, but they don't really have that much nutrients, so that's why you really want to stick to those other dark leafy greens. And then with fruits, you want to offer a lot of different fruits as well. Depending on what reptile you keep, sometimes it's only good as a snack and you don't want to be feeding fruits too often because they are high in sugars. But when you are typically feeding fruits, you do want to avoid things that are high in acid like citrus, because that can be a little much for your reptile. So like banana, strawberries, blueberries, mango, those are some wonderful things to offer to your reptile if they can't eat fruits. But again, you want to do it in moderation because these are going to be treats. And the last thing when it comes to variety that I am super excited to tell you guys about is Reptilinks. So Reptilinks sent me so many little, they look like little sausages. They're the cutest little things. And they are fantastic because they are filled with nutrients. The outer package looks like plastic. It is not plastic. It's actually made of beef, so it is perfectly safe for your reptile to eat and healthy for them. What's really cool is they have all of these different blends. So they have an omnivore blend that does have insects inside of it. They have other blends that have quail and rabbit. So what's really cool about this is that if you have a snake and you want to offer variety to your snake, because offering variety to a snake is probably the most difficult thing in the hobby because mice and rodents are the #1 feeder. Snakes are just going to be eating that. So if you want to offer them some variety, you can try the Reptilinks. They come in different sizes as well, so you can literally buy a size that is similar in size to your snake. And then when your snake eats it, it'll be like it's eating a rodent basically, but they're going to be getting quail and rabbit in their system for the first time, and they're going to get that good amount of variety and nutrients to their diet. So highly recommend checking it out. I'm still trying to get my snakes to do it. They can be a little picky at first because they realize it's not a rodent, but if you puncture it or cut it in half and they smell it, they may start to get used to it and then try to eat it. So I'm working on it still with my snakes, but one day it's going to happen. I've heard that it's very successful with a lot of corn snakes and colubrids. So if you have any of those or garter snakes, absolutely try the Reptilinks. They also have it for lizards. So my blue-tongued skink loves it so much. He's had 2 different kinds now, and it is so amazing. It's also great for my pixie frog, who literally eats anything. And it's really hard to feed a pixie frog because they eat so much and you want to offer that variety, but they're just a big animal, so it requires a lot of bugs, which can be expensive. So being able to offer Reptilinks is like a nice filling meal for my frog, and it'll save me some money by not having to buy all of these bugs. So just fantastic. If you guys want to try Reptilinks, you guys can order it at the link in my description. And you can use the discount code Reptilian Garden and save $5 off your order. So I highly recommend checking it out. For any type of reptile that you're keeping, there's a good chance that they're going to like it. It's something worth trying because you can offer variety and get things in their diet that they've never had before, which is just so good for them. Now we're moving on to the second part of diet, which is hydration. Hydration is extremely important when it comes to diet because a lot of reptiles actually get a lot of their hydration just from the food that they're eating alone. So a lot of reptiles, especially arboreal species, aren't typically drinking from water bowls and things like that when you're keeping them in captivity. So that's why it's so important to make sure that they have very hydrating food that they're eating. So ways that you can do this is feeding live insects. So avoid all of the freeze-dried types of insects. A lot of the times, especially with arboreals as well, they need to see movement in order to eat anyway, so it does have to be live. If you're feeding any freeze-dried insects, they're going to be lacking a lot of that nutrients and moisture that will help to keep your reptile hydrated. So that's why it's so important to make sure you're feeding those live insects, also gut loading them. Pretty much the same thing. They also sell a lot of freeze-dried veggies and fruits. I typically just don't recommend using that stuff at all because they are filled with preservatives and chemicals that aren't good for your reptiles, and then the nutrients is lacking and the moisture is lacking, so that way they won't be hydrated. And people yell at me, they're like, oh, well, you can rehydrate it, you can stick it in water. It's still not as good as feeding a nice and hydrated fresh fruit or vegetable. you can't go wrong. And it's probably going to be cheaper to do that anyway. So just avoid the freeze-dried crap at stores and get yourself some fresh fruits and vegetables for your reptiles. That way they can stay nice and hydrated. 3 is supplementation. Supplementation is so important when it comes to reptile keeping, and it can get a little bit confusing, so I'm going to try to explain it very briefly. Hopefully it will make sense. There are 2 main things that you're going to need: calcium with D3 and calcium without D3. So depending on what type of reptile you're keeping, if they have full exposure UVB, then you want to be using calcium without D3, because they're getting D3 from the UVB, and if you're supplementing that in their food as well, it can be an overload of D3, which is not good for them. So if you have a reptile that doesn't have UVB, or it's not consistently basking under it and getting the full D3 all day long, then you can do calcium supplement with D3. These are great for the nocturnal species, any type of species that doesn't even require any UVB at all. That's how you make sure they're getting that D3 in their system. So that's the 2 distinct things. It really depends on the reptile you keep, but hopefully that makes sense. And I basically recommend, with the frequency for feeding the supplements, is to do it with every single feeding. And then there's another thing that you need, which is multivitamins. Some of them come with D3 and some of them don't. I recommend doing this 1 to 2 times a month. Instead of using the calcium, just use the multivitamin instead. And another supplement that I want to add on to this list that is fantastic and just offers more nutrients and minerals to your reptile's diet is bee pollen. Bee pollen is fantastic for bearded dragons in particular that are picky eaters and don't want to eat their greens and salads. If you put the bee pollen on top, I don't know what it is about it, but they're drawn to it, they love it, and it makes them actually eat their salads. And then they're getting more nutrients from the bee pollen as well. So bee pollen is a great thing to have if you are keeping any reptiles, just to offer to put more, I guess, variety and supplementation into their food. Number 4 is frequency when it comes to feeding your reptile. So it does depend on what you have, but typically if you have a baby lizard that is, let's say, under a year old, I recommend feeding it daily, once a day. That's it. And I also recommend doing it in the morning to afternoon if you can. It's best not to feed reptiles at nighttime, because then the lights are going to turn off and they aren't going to be able to properly digest it with heat. So it's best to do it in the morning to afternoon. And then if you have an older lizard that is, let's say, a year or older, typically feedings are every couple of days. So that's typically how it goes. Again, you do want to research the species and make sure that you're doing it correctly. That also goes for tortoises. If you have a baby tortoise, the first year you're going to be feeding it every single day. And then honestly, after that, it's okay to do it like once a week. I'm down to once a week with Peaches. She would eat every single day if she could, but that's not the healthiest thing for them. So you want to make sure that you are doing the frequency okay and that your reptile is a decent weight and is growing properly. And then when it comes to snakes, it is a little bit similar. If you have a baby snake that is under a year old, it is recommended to feed at least once a week. And you can do this, and with snakes you want to make sure, obviously I've mentioned this a million times, but if you're new here, gonna mention it again. So when you are feeding a snake, you want to make sure that the rodent is as thick in girth as the thickest part of your snake. So some people think it goes based off of the snake's head. That's not how it goes. Snakes may have way smaller heads than the rest of their body, so you do want to make sure that the body size is going to be the size of the rodent that you're feeding it. So then snakes that are a year or older, you want to feed them, typically you can do it once a week, or you can even slow down. It does depend on the size of your snake. You don't want to make sure that you're not feeding them too much. You could go down to every other week, once every other week. And some people, if they have a snake that is on a diet like Bowie, they go down to one big meal once a month. So it does depend. You can contact your vet and discuss frequency and size to make sure that your snake is a healthy weight and you're not over or under doing anything when it comes to the feeding. The last thing we're going to talk about is how much do you feed them? So basically with lizards, I get this question all the time. People don't know how much to feed, and they literally will be counting like the crickets and be like, I fed 15 crickets, is this okay? that you can't go based off of a number of insects. You basically just feed your reptile that one time during the day, and you're gonna see how much they eat within a span of 10 to 15 minutes. They will typically let you know when they're done, and then that's when they're done. So that's typically what you're gonna do. As a species gets older, some of them you'll notice they could just keep eating and eating and eating. Like my red-footed tortoise Peaches, she would just eat until she died. Like, she has nothing but an appetite, so that's why you gotta make sure you can't always go off of their judgment. You do need to follow some sort of regulation and frequency, so that's why I hope this video will be helpful to just pay attention to things like that, because that's why Peaches gets one big meal once a week now, because she's still growing, and she is an eater, too much of an eater. So yeah, I hope this video was helpful. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and leave it in the comment section. Again, please check out Reptilinks. Their link is in my description, and again, the discount code is Reptilian Garden to save $5 off of your order. I would love to see more people using Reptilinks in the hobby, just to offer more variety, because I think that is a fantastic way to do it, and we are kind of limited, I feel like, especially with offering variety to our snakes. So this is a beautiful thing that I love to see in the hobby, and I hope that your animals love it as well. So I will see you guys in the next one. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and yeah, we'll see you next time.